topics that they're learning about, they're not interested in texting their friends anymore because they're engaged in the learning process. So, and I don't mean that in like a judgmental way, but I think it's the type of hard conversation that we have to have in education. When people are bored, they're off task. When people are engaged, truly engaged, right? Like if I love what I'm doing, if I'm writing a paper for school, and I love the topic that I'm teaching about or learning about, I'm not getting distracted by those things. So, you're right.
Think about this though. You've got 7 periods in a day, so a student has 7 classes.
Right.
I think it's unrealistic to say that they're going to be so engaged in every class that we don't need to worry about anything else. Because as we eliminate distractions, it helps them engage. I have 7 children, and my last boy right now is a 17-year-old, and I've had to take away some devices to help him focus because he will be watching YouTube videos in class because he thinks he's going to be a millionaire that aren't pertinent to the class he's sitting in. So there's some immaturity that's involved in high school students and devices at their leisure.
No, I won't argue with that. No, it's balance, right? It's all about striking balance, you know. So other examples that I've heard then is that the expectation is in class that the cell phones are put away, and if you want to pull it out, then just ask. Say, hey, I want to send a tweet. Is that okay? Well, yeah, sure. What do you want to tweet about? Just ask.
We do. I think you do too. In class, because it's a language classroom, and it's a upper level language classroom.
Yeah.
They're usually reading and working with complicated texts. So mine can use iTranslate, and they can use their phone to assist them in their work. As a matter of fact, on tests, building up to a summative test at the end of the year, I want them to be using either paper copies of dictionaries or ways to find words they don't already know because they're building language skills right then and there. But the trick is their maturity level and using it and engaging appropriately, I guess.
Yeah. No, you're right. So that you're encouraging me to write the children's book I was thinking about writing. So our kids were given a book about healthy eating. That it's like appropriate for like a 5-year-old, 3 to 5-year-old. You read books to kids every night, and it used the idea of red light, yellow light, and green light foods, so kids understood the difference, right? So green light foods are obviously fruits, vegetables, proteins, things like that. Yellow light foods were like, like maybe like chips or French fries or things that are okay to eat once in a while, but you don't eat them every day. And then red light foods are ice cream, candy, cake, sweets, soda, those kind of things. You don't eat them once in a while. Yeah. So you get the idea, though, right? So anyway, I read this. We read this book to our kids at bedtime, and it really resonated with them. So the kids were at a party with maybe mom the day before, and they had a cupcake, and then I took them somewhere, and I was like, oh, let's, you guys have been really great today. Let's go for a special treat and get some ice cream. And my kids would say, I swear to God, they'd say, no, you know what, Dad, we had a red light food yesterday. We probably shouldn't have one today.
Oh my goodness.
And I was just like, that is awesome. So, and that's the key. I think you got to start young, right? You have to teach them at a young age, the differences in foods. And so I said, well, what if, I thought about what I know about technology and how I'm raising my kids. What I've taught them is that the purpose of technology is not to entertain us. That's not why technology was created. Technology was created and invented to help us connect with people outside of our community, to help us find answers to our own questions, to be creative, to be curious. That was the intended purpose of technology. Okay, that's a green light use of technology. So when you have that whole screen time conversation, if you're doing a green light use of technology, you're answering your questions, you're being creative, you're producing content, you're blogging, you're publishing photos, you're doing things like that, all right, I'll give you a little bit more screen time. right? If you're doing a yellow light use of technology, maybe watching quote-unquote educational videos, that's consuming content. It's a passive activity. That's a yellow light use of technology. So yeah, even though the content's educational, it's passive, and you're just sitting there consuming. So yellow light uses of technology are okay to do once in a while, but you don't do them all the time. Red light uses of technology are Candy Crush, or video games, or just mindless anything that you do on technology. As a red light, it's a special treat. Yeah, it's fun to play shoot 'em up video games and things like that, but it's not something you do all the time. And when you think about it, that's the complete opposite of how we introduce technology to kids. My wife's a speech pathologist, and she works in early intervention, birth to 3. She goes into kids' homes who have speech delays or developmental delays, but they can say SpongeBob, or they know how to do their ABCs because they've had an iPad. But if you give the kid a baby and a bottle and you say, give the baby a bottle, the kid looks at it like, what are you talking about? I don't know what to do with this, right? But the kid learned his colors and his letters and his alphabet on the iPad. Which one's really more valuable, right? So when we introduce technology to kids as this is a fun thing to do, it's games, it's flashy, it's fun, well, that's what they think technology is for. And so that's when you get those parents, when the kids are 10 years old and they're like, I just can't get Johnny off that Xbox. I can't get him to put the thing down. Well, how did you introduce technology to him? You taught him ever since the kid was born and old enough to know how to swipe on a screen that technology is for games, right? So that's why I want to write this children's book with the red light, yellow light, green light concept of when you introduce your kids to technology, it's for creating and producing and being curious and inquisitive and learning. That's why technology was created. Technology was not created to be a babysitter or to give kids an iPad to play games, right? So we're totally off topic.
Sorry, I accept all responsibility.
That's a good topic.
But I think, relevant, right, to everything we're doing anyway, so it is what it is. Okay. So I believe if you go, we got a bunch of people in there. So yeah, so if you go to this short URL, it'll bring you to my Google Doc. Rather than doing a slide, we're just going to kind of pop around the internet and talk about some different things. And then that way you guys have the link and all the resources that I put in there. All right? So everyone was in my session. I guess, was anyone who didn't make the keynote this morning, which is possible. Maybe you had kids or whatever, right? And that's okay. So we talked about authentic audience in the classroom, okay? And I like to propose the question of, does an authentic audience exist within the 4 walls of this classroom? And the example that I gave is that students are oftentimes, they've known each other for a really long time because they've been in grade school together. Maybe they play on sports teams together. Maybe they go to church together on Sunday. Maybe they live down the street from each other, right? And so if I come up here in front of the class, and I've known most of you in here since kindergarten, we're in 5th grade or 6th grade now, and I give a presentation, and I come back and I sit down next to you, who I'm going to go play with after school, and I'm like, hey, man, how was my presentation? Even if it was lousy, what are you going to say? It was awesome. It was awesome.
You're the best.
Is that an authentic audience? I don't think so. And I'm not the end-all be-all of deciding what it is. But I don't think it is. Now, is there value in peer-to-peer feedback? Absolutely. But peer-to-peer feedback within the 4 walls of the classroom versus authentic feedback from people outside the walls of the classroom is different, and it's valuable for different ways. I like to think that an authentic audience is one that chooses to participate, who chooses to provide feedback, right? If I say, just because you two are sitting next to each other, take your poem that you just wrote and provide feedback to your peer, there's some value to that, right? It's not completely worthless, but it's not the same as if you publish that poem online for the entire world to see and you get feedback from people you don't know. That's totally different. The other example I gave today was that I can think back to going home on the weekend, coming up with an idea for a project or a paper that my kids are going to write. I come in all fired up, all jazzed up to tell, here's what you're going to do, here's the project, blah, blah. What's the first question you get? When's it due? How long does it have to be?
How many points?
How many points? Can I change the font? Single space or double space? And I'm like, what? Like, aren't you excited about what we're doing? You want to know, can you change the font? Really? And so through just then my experience, I realized that when we get publishing students' work online, it completely changes the dynamic in the classroom. Because now students are no longer just writing that paper or doing that project for the teacher or to get a grade. They're getting real feedback from people that they don't know. And let me tell you, we live in a world of feedback. Facebook likes and retweets and comments. That's all a form of feedback, right? And so when you give kids the opportunity to get feedback from a real person that they don't know, oh my God, these kids are so excited to know that I'm 16, some 16-year-old in Atlanta thought that my post was really cool, right? And when I was talking about those comments that the kids got on the blog post today, it wasn't just like, hey dude, cool post. I mean, these were like 3 to 5 sentence interactions between these students. Wow, your post reminds me of this book that I read last semester, and where did you get this idea, or where did you find this video, or how did you come up with it? I mean, it was rich interaction. It wasn't as simple as a Facebook like or good job. It was rich interaction between these kids. And one of the most profound things that happened was, in a way, it kind of became a contest in that classroom of who was getting the most comments. There were like a handful of kids, maybe 5 kids, that were getting 30 or 40 comments on every one of their blog posts, and there were a good number of kids who got 2 or 3 or no comments. And if you were to read their post, let me finish my point, I'll come back to you. If you read their post, you would know why. It wasn't very interesting. And they didn't include images, they didn't include hyperlinks, they didn't embed videos, where and obviously all these things weren't appropriate. And so these kids were then coming up to the teacher and saying, hey, Mr. Jacob, I'm not getting any comments on my blog post. Can you help me be a better writer? And the teacher's jaw just drops. You could hear it hit the floor like, what did you just ask me? You want to be a better writer? Since when? Right? That's what happens when kids are writing for an authentic audience, not just for a grade or a teacher. Go ahead.
Yeah, personally, quickly, in the first grade I was a buzzard reader. I wasn't a bluebird.
Right.
I was also the youngest in my class, but I didn't understand that stuff.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I'm a senior and I'm still a buzzard reader. In my mind, I wasn't, but I felt that way. And my students, because we so integrate our classes here, got some, I see what you're saying, and I see those top 5 or 6 students out of a 30, 28 student class, getting the posts and whatnot, and then the bottom 5 or so never getting the post. And they're still buzzards. I'm wondering how to do this in a way where everyone gets a little bit of encouragement, but they would still have the how do I improve attitude or motivation.
I see what you're saying. What was interesting? The 4 or 5 kids that were getting all the comments, they weren't the 4.0 kids. They weren't the quote unquote smart kids. So it wasn't your traditional bluebirds, redbirds, buzzards kind of thing. Actually, some of the kids who were getting a lot of the comments were the kids who never raised their hand to participate in class. And the other thing is, we had kids in our class who were no longer being judged by the fact that they were the cheerleader or the jock or the redhead freckled pale-skinned kid who doesn't have a lot of money and parents don't have a lot of money. They're not being judged by all these preconceived notions. They're being judged by their ability to convey a thought and write to their audience's expectations. So I could see where your you're making that connection of like the buzzards and the accelerated readers, but it's a different dynamic. It's not about are you the smart kid, it's are you writing engaging content. You don't necessarily have to be the best writer in the world to get a bunch of comments on your post. In all honesty, some of these kids weren't very good writers. But what they were really good at is they understood what the audience was looking for based on the topic that they were writing about, and they were able to pull in YouTube videos, and pull in images, and pull in links to other places online, and that's what got them a lot of comments. And so they're still led to some really good conversations about, you know, you've got some really engaging content here, but let's work on some of your actual writing, right? So it wasn't just the good writers got the comments. So that, in a way, it kind of takes care of itself. So, like I said this morning, this isn't necessarily a PSA that everyone go and start blogging with your kids. Because if every freshman teacher started blogging with their kids, well then every kid's writing a blog in every single class, and then that's going to be not nearly as exciting, right? So the point about this topic is finding ways to incorporate an authentic audience into your classroom. There's a lot of ways to do that. It's not just blogging. It could be Twitter. It could be Instagram. It could be YouTube videos. It could be podcasts. There's a lot of ways to get authentic feedback and provide authentic learning opportunities that aren't blogging. Okay? Blogging's one method to do that. So you have to decide what is, again, like what's my learning outcomes? What's my educational objective that I'm trying to accomplish? And then you find your technology that's going to empower you or your students to achieve that outcome. Okay? So I want to provide some different examples here. So there's a link here to the video on YouTube that I showed this morning. It's about 16 minutes. And there is one piece that I want to touch on from that video earlier today that we didn't talk about. And so there's a part in here. There it is. How many people, like show of hands, are familiar with who Grant Wiggins is? Okay, 2 or 3? Okay. So Grant Wiggins founded an organization that he does. We go around doing professional development, and he also came up with this idea of understanding by design. So it's a way of writing curriculum where you start with the end in mind, and you work your way backwards from there. Okay? So you can see he's the president of Authentic Education. So this guy, this is my educational Michael Jordan or Peyton Manning or whatever, right? Yeah. And so when I was making this video, I asked a couple of people who I know who are also interested in the topic, would you mind tweeting something about your experience with authentic audience and education? And I want to take a screenshot of it and incorporate it into this video. So if you watch the whole thing, you'll see there's a couple of tweets, highlighted in the video. And so, in a way, this is kind of my plug for Twitter. If you're not on Twitter and not using Twitter yet, this is a way for me to kind of plug Twitter and the value that it can bring to you. Twitter has this ability to break down barriers between everyday teachers and experts like Grant Wiggins. Or kids in any professional in any field that kids are really interested in going into. So when I reached out to Grant Wiggins and I said, Mr. Wiggins, would you do me a favor and tweet something about your experience with authentic audience? I want to incorporate it into my video. He said, that sounds really interesting. I'd like to learn more. Here's my personal email. Can you give me some details? So I'm like, yeah, all right, yeah, absolutely. So I email him. I tell him the background. It's a world affairs class. We're studying current events through We're studying the topic of equality and can we achieve equality as a society. And we did that through the lens of current events. So like one-child policy in China and human trafficking and all those kinds of things. So we would, present these different ideas to kids, and then the teacher would ask an open-ended question, and the kids would blog about it. So he said, wow, that's really cool. How about I just record something in GarageBand, and I'll send you the MP3, and you can put it in your video. And I was like, what? Yeah, please, that would be awesome, right? So this is Grant Wiggins, and for those you don't know, sadly, Mr. Wiggins passed away not too long ago. And so this has made the connection for me even, I guess more special. So this was one of his recordings. He did 2 actually, that I incorporated into the video. Oh wait, I need. Try again.
And they're going above and beyond because they want the attention from the kids in the other class.
The virtues of having a real or simulated audience for performance are pretty straightforward. The student has much greater clarity about the goal because there's a specific audience and purpose. And there's the incentive of it's not just for the teacher, it's for this audience. And I've seen it repeatedly in English classes, in history classes, in vocational, technical classes, that the students work harder with much greater focus on what they're trying to accomplish when there is a real or virtual audience that they have to deal with.
So if you haven't quite tapped into Twitter yet, Grant Wiggins didn't know me from a hole in the wall, right? And all I did was ask him a question. He replied and it sent me down, right? I've heard of other examples of where kids tweet their favorite author. Next thing you know, the author's following the kid, and the kid has ongoing interaction with the author. Kids are tweeting astronauts at the International Space Station while they're in space. There's one example of a friend whose kid was into graphic design. He wasn't a very good student, unfortunately, because he was a really creative student, and we work in this system that doesn't value creativity as much as it does as the things that are on a standardized test. But the kid was very creative, very artsy, was into graphic design, and what he did was he had his favorite rap artists, and he made he looked at it like, okay, this album, this is what I would have made the album cover look like. And he just sent him a tweet and said, hey man, love your work. I created an album cover for you because that's the kind of stuff I like to do. Next thing you know, the kid's getting contracted out to make album covers for musicians. He was like a 2.5 student in high school, didn't have to go to college, just started a business making album covers for people because he tweeted them their artwork. Right? There's multiple examples like this, where again, Twitter has that ability to break down barriers between everyday people and celebrities or experts or athletes. There's athletes who are tweeting professional players or college athletes and saying, hey, I'm trying to get recruited. What did you do to get recruited to get your scholarship? And they're like, oh wow, that's really cool. This kid asked me a question. I mean, more times than not, the people that I've ever reached out to are people that I know who have just gone out on a limb and asked somebody a question. They usually reply. Really, really cool. So connect with other educators who are teaching the same content as you, who are teaching similar students as you. You'd be amazed how much they're willing to share with you. That's going to improve your craft, and you don't necessarily have to sit at a professional development conference to be a better teacher. You just have to ask. Okay, so that's my last, I guess, kind of like bit that I'll talk about the video. So the link to the video's in there. this short version that I made, I condensed it down and submitted it as my 3-minute submission to become a Microsoft Innovative Educator expert. I represented the United States at the Global Forum in Barcelona back in 2014, and this was the project that I had submitted, so that's why there's a short version. There's links to Quad Blogging, which is the site that the teacher and I used to connect with the 3 other classrooms around the world and facilitate this quad blogging experience. You don't have to use quad blogging to do this, though. Okay? If you have multiple buildings in your district, there's no reason why, if I was a 5th grade teacher, that I couldn't reach out to 3 other 5th grade teachers in my district in different buildings and just say, hey, let's take this quad blogging example and let's do this. Let's give everybody a blog. They're going to write about something that they care about, and then they're going to take turns providing feedback for each other if they choose to do so. A lot of times that can work out better because when you do quad blogging, while it sounds really cool that you connect with classrooms around the world, sometimes what happens is those classes maybe don't have the same access to technology that we do. One of the classes in the video was from India. They got to the computer lab about once a month. So they didn't provide nearly as much feedback as some of the other classes did. There's also a time zone difference, which sometimes can present an obstacle, right? So, and there's other barriers that you have to overcome. Like the kids who were in England in this example, their definition of, or their spelling of color is different than our spelling of color, or different words. And so it took some time for kids to kind of build that relationship and overcome those cultural differences, which is good and bad, right? There's a lot of value to it, but then sometimes it's a barrier. So just keep it in mind that it isn't always going to be puppy dogs and rainbows like the example that I showed. Sometimes those teachers in the other classes are going to flake out and they're going to stop halfway through the semester because they maybe weren't really prepared for it. So that's why I think there's maybe some benefit in doing it within your district because those teachers and those kids all have devices, you're all in the same time zone, you're all from the same culture. So choose wisely, right? And just know that this isn't always going to be perfect. Kidblog was the blogging site that we used at that time. At that time, Kidblog was free. You have to pay for it now, which is kind of a bummer, but it's not super expensive. I've worked with teachers who have done those crowdsourcing websites to get the community to fund the Kidblog fee, to do a class of blogs. And over here on the right-hand side, what I did was I worked with a couple of administrators that I asked them, what are some things to consider from an administrative level when you're going to do something like quad blogging? So when you're publishing students' work online, you have to be aware of certain things, right? You can't necessarily publish some kids' pictures online. You can't use real kids' names online in certain circumstances, especially if it's special education students. There's some legal implications there. I could probably do an entire session on just everything you need to consider before you start publishing the kids' work online. This is just kind of like the icing on the cake result part of it. So just know if you are going to consider doing this, it's a considerable amount of planning and time and conversations with parents and administrators before you do this in your classroom. This isn't something that you go and just start doing the first week of school. These kids that were in this one specific example, we spent the entire first semester only blogging within our classroom so that we could scaffold their ability to the point where we felt comfortable enough that we could release them to the hounds, to the real world, and feel safe about that. There's a lot of scaffolding that went into this opportunity. So, for example, we felt like we had to prepare kids for if you're going to publish a blog post online, what happens if somebody just destroys your blog post online? They say nothing but mean, hurtful, hateful things on your blog post. What happens? So we did a lot of role play in how do you respond to those types of things. Because the reality is, when you publish your stuff online, there's going to be some person out there that God knows, for whatever reason, they just have nothing better to do than to go around to people's blogs and things that they're publishing online and just say mean, hurtful, hateful things. So don't protect your students from that. Prepare them for that, right? We can't put them in a bubble and keep them safe from all this stuff. And what it all boiled down to was this person who's saying those mean, hateful, hurtful things. You have no idea what kind of life that person lives, or what kind of upbringing that kid had, or what kind of person that kid has. And those mean and hurtful, hateful things, that's probably more so about that person than it is about the post that you just wrote online. So if you see something that's just mean, just stop reading it, delete, move on. It ain't about you, it's about them, right? So a lot of scaffolding in terms of that before you start publishing your kids' work online. Okay, so in our remaining amount of time, what I want to do, like I said, not PSA for blogging. This is, let's think about authentic audience and what that means in a teaching and learning environment, and then what are some other ways that we can provide an authentic audience, okay? So, one of my favorite examples in the whole wide world is Math Train TV. This is, has anyone ever seen those Khan Academy videos where he's writing and he's talking at the same time? Okay, so picture student-made Khan Academy videos. In essence, that's what this is, okay? They're all Common Core aligned. They've been doing this since 2006. It's pretty amazing, and they're middle school students. Now, my favorite example is the one I always go to the most viewed, prime factorization. I think you'll be able to tell. This kid's name's probably not Bob, especially when you hear his voice. His name's, probably not Bob. And we'll just watch it and then we'll talk about it for a minute.
Hi, I'm Bob, and I'm going to show you how to do prime factorization. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a factor tree. A factor tree is you take a number, such as the number 32, and you break it up into its prime factors. So 32, we're going to break it up into the numbers 2 and 16. So we're going to try to get it down to all prime numbers. A prime number is when a number is only divisible by 1 in itself. 32 is composite, meaning that it is divisible by more than the numbers 2 in itself.
Okay, we don't need to see a lot of it, but you get the idea, right? How much vocabulary did that kid just use, right? There's a big push for speaking skills in math classes, and math teachers always are like, how the heck do I get my kids to speak in math class? So the other thing is, if you can hear a kid use the vocabulary, articulate how and why they solved the problem the way they did, do they need to do 30 practice problems on a worksheet for you to know that they've mastered that skill? Would a kid have more fun making this video instead of doing 30 practice problems on a worksheet? Absolutely. Do you have to watch every single one of these? You think so?
Well, you should. If they're going to do the work, you should watch the work.
What I mean is, this is maybe an example where you could do peer-to-peer feedback. Right? Maybe, in the beginning, again, and this is another thing you're going to scaffold to. Like, the first time you do this, it's going to be pretty lousy. Right? But that's okay. The kids are going to get better at it. And you're going to want to watch it in the beginning. But once you kind of create, again, like those routines and procedures in your classroom, if it becomes the norm that their ability to demonstrate their evidence of understanding is a 2-minute video, and limit them. Don't let them do it for 30 minutes. You have to show me that you know how to solve this math problem or do this equation within 2 minutes. Right? Now, I want you to watch 3 others and provide feedback to them. There's a ton of higher order thinking that goes into a person providing good feedback to somebody else. And that kid knowing, did Johnny or Susie make that, is that video accurate? Is it correct? Right? So you're gonna watch them. I kind of set that up on purpose, right? Yeah, you're gonna watch them all, But there's also a lot of value in me watching another kid's video because they're learning that entire time. They're evaluating they're deciding, is this accurate, right? Math teachers have, understandably, have a difficult time figuring out how do I effectively integrate technology into the classroom. Now, are they going to do this for every single concept that you teach in math? No, not necessarily. But there's going to be times where it makes sense to do this kind of stuff, right? Now, when thinking about authentic audience, this kid, this was published March 28th, 2008. It's been viewed 87,000 times. How cool does Bob, the sixth grader, feel about the fact that he has a video that's been viewed 87,000 times? Right? That your kids could be making these videos, you upload them, you don't even have to upload them to YouTube anymore. You can just upload them right to your Google Drive and you can share the video and it can be seen, it can be watched via Google Drive. Now Bob can share his math video with his grandma in California and his auntie in New York, right? Like, how cool is that? And other people can see it. Or maybe you start your own Math Train TV in your school where you start to aggregate all of these lessons over time and you make it kind of like a competition with the kids. The best videos are going to be put into our Springdale School District Math Video Library. And you create a YouTube channel with Common Core lined math videos created by students. I want to talk about flipped classroom and want to save yourself some time. You don't need to make the videos. Have your kids make them and aggregate them and save them and show them to your other kids. You're teaching the concept. Over time, you're going to accumulate enough of these really well-made videos that when a kid goes home and the parents haven't solved for prime factorization in 20 years, hey, go to my YouTube channel. Check out Bob's video. Right? How cool is that? No picture of Bob. Nobody knows where he's from. Nobody knows how old he is. Well, I guess they know he's in 6th grade. But you get the point, right? Safe, relatively safe, right? Not violating any kind of legal matters. So yeah, I think this is a great way. But no, this isn't going to be puppy dogs and rainbows the first time you do it. You're going to hit some obstacles. You're going to fail a little bit in the beginning, but how do you iterate and overcome, right? I would suggest teaming up with some other math teachers. Or I mean, can you only do this in math class? Let me ask you this. If, here, let me see if I can find another example. I don't remember if I put that on here. No, okay, hold on. Let me go to YouTube really quick. Students.
So do you have suggestions for the best technology for students to create videos like that?
So the technology, I guess, like skill.
No, just like what
no, I mean,
what app, what program?
Yeah, so that process is called screencasting. So I would recommend going on Google, and people have written to the College Come Home about best screencasting tools. Yeah, there's Screencastify, there's Snagit, there's Screencast-O-Matic. There's a bunch of screencasting tools that you can use. They're all basically the same. The thing you have to consider is, can my kids write on their screen? If not, I don't think that's the end of the world. I've also seen this done. Well, go ahead.
Paper slides are great, real low.
Paper slides. Yep, talk about paper slides for a second while I find one.
They can pre-write everything out on pieces of paper and really just slide them in front of a screen as they're talking. It's just a real fun, low-tech way for them to make a video.
If you use Tyler DeWitt, that's what he does in chemistry, for example.
So here's an example of a paper slide video.
How to make a paper slide video. What is a paper slide video, you may ask? Well, hopefully by the end of this short clip, you'll be able to answer that question as well as how to make a paper slide video.
Sounds like she's from
Step
marketing.
1, you want to make sure that you get organized. Either you'll be assigned a topic or pick a topic, but you'll need to research, learn, and study that topic. You'll also want to make sure you have all your materials: paper, markers, scissors, maybe glue, pencils. Make sure you get organized. Step 2.
Okay, So you get the idea, right? You don't need fancy screencasting software. That's the best part about it. It's just as effective this way. And the key is that you get to hear kids use the math vocabulary, or whatever vocabulary it is that you're doing. Whether it's explaining the elements of a cell, right? The mitochondria and the nucleus, and I'm running out of vocabulary terms that I remember. But yeah, right? I mean, just as effective, I think. Yeah, so, okay, so other examples. Think about this. When kids come up to the front of the class and do a presentation, like they do a PowerPoint or a little slide deck, how many days does it take for your entire class to get up and do a presentation?
A week?
2 minutes.
It depends. A couple of days. Let's say an average of 2 full instructional days for kids to come up and everybody be able to do a presentation, right? If you're the first kid who goes on the very first day, how much is that kid paying attention the next 2 days? Even if you give them a rubric and a worksheet and you try to force them to pay attention by answering some questions, that's not real learning, right? I mean, there's some element of learning going on there, but it's not like deep and powerful, sticky learning, right? The kid will remember for a couple of days, and then once the presentation thing is gone, everything that you forced them to write down in that rubric, that's going to be gone. They're not going to remember any of that stuff, right? Or if you're the last kid to go, how much is that kid paying attention the first 2 full days until he's the last person to go? And everybody in between. As soon as I'm done, I'm checked out. Woo! I did my presentation. You guys talk about whatever you want. I'm done, right? So imagine if they screencast their slide deck. Make them talk about whatever topic they're talking about in 3 minutes or less. You got to get to the point. There's no fluff. Just talk about the main points. Screencast it, a slide deck, 3 minutes. Now we're going to share it. We're going to critique each other's. We're going to provide feedback. And we're going to do it, make it this iterative process until my slide deck and my screencast is really good. And then I'm going to publish them on my blog. And then they get authentic audience from the world, or feedback from the world, right? And you didn't take up 2 full days of instructional time. Now, that's not to say we're never going to give kids an opportunity to speak in front of the class, right? You're still going to give them that live opportunity, but let them screencast the first 3, 4, 5 times to practice their speaking skills, and they start to feel more confident about the content that they're presenting on. And then when they do get up in front of the class, they're going to do a lot better job, right? So you can do speaking and listening skills on a much more regular basis by doing screencasting and things like that. Any thoughts or ideas or questions? Okay, a couple of other outside the box, I think, or at least I like to think they're outside of the box kind of ideas for authentic audience. Does anyone know what Kickstarter is?
Yes.
A couple people. So Kickstarter is this. It's crowdfunding. So I have an idea. I have a product that I want to make. It's a good idea. I don't have the money to make my product or idea come to life. So people on the internet say, wow, that's a cool idea. Here's $1, or $2, or $5, or $10, you know, because they think your idea is cool too. So Kickstarter is a platform where all these people with ideas but don't have the funding can come together and get the money they need to make their idea come to life. Now, my favorite example to share is Makey Makey. Now, Makey Makey was the idea of 2 guys who are in the MIT Media Lab, and you create a campaign. Now, Makey Makey, they originally had a goal of $25,000. They raised $568,000. And part of the way that they do that is they say, pay me for the product up front, and if once I get the money, then I'll send you the product. Instead of getting funding for your idea and then producing it, it's basically like, look, I got this really cool idea. I just don't have the resources to make it. So if you give me the money up front, I'll deliver the product afterwards, okay? this isn't like an investment. You're not investing in the makey product. Like if you give them $5,000 and it blows up, you get like a huge return on your investment. It's not investing. This is a cool idea. I'd love to have one of those. Sure, I'll give you $50 and I'll wait the year that it might make for you to actually manufacture these things. So makey, they had a goal of 25 grand. They made 568,000. This is my bonus. I get to show you what makey is, but we're not going to talk very much about it. I just think it's brilliant.
Hi, I'm Jay.
And I'm Eric. We're graduate students at MIT Media Lab.
We have a dream that everyone is an inventor.
So we created Makey to let you invent just by alligator clipping. Alligator clips stuff like bananas to your Makey. When you touch the banana, your computer just thinks you're touching the keyboard. The front has arrow keys, spacebar, and mouse left click. When you're ready for more, flip the Makey over and you've got more keyboard keys and support for the mouse. You can even use the board like an Arduino when you are ready. No programming, no breadboarding. You don't even have to install software. Just plug it in USB.
Order your Makey today and start changing how the world works.
Okay. Now, what I'm suggesting here is let your kids come up with an idea for a product or a company or something along those lines, right? And have them make a Kickstarter campaign. They have to create a promotional marketing type video. They have to write what is their Makey product about, right? There's a huge push for nonfiction writing in schools with the Common Core. They have to take pictures. They have to tell people, they have to convince people, why would you want to invest in my product? Okay? Worst case scenario, a bunch of people see it and nobody ever invests in their product. So what? You introduced your kids to a really cool concept that maybe someday when they do acquire some skills, they can become an entrepreneur, right? But just think about the higher order thinking skills that go into how would you try to convince somebody of your idea, right? Or maybe take an idea that's already been created and how would you write a marketing campaign for that to convince people as if it were a Kickstarter campaign and just do it on like a Google Doc, right? Or in a slide deck. It doesn't have to really be on a Kickstarter, but let's pretend we're going on Kickstarter. And then eventually maybe you really will go on Kickstarter. And maybe they'll come back and give you $1 million because you introduced them to this. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so we're almost out of time. But there's other examples in the Google Doc. Like I always think about Etsy. I don't know, some people think it's funny that I'm a guy and I'm into Etsy. But I love Etsy. It's an online marketplace of all homemade, handmade things. Think about the kids in your classes that make the silly rubber band bracelets, right? Or whatever. Maybe you got a girl in high school who likes to knit, right? Tie it together with like Genius Hour, 20% time. Have them create an Etsy site and create an Etsy page. I don't know, hair jewelry. Maybe you inspire kids to actually make some jewelry, right? It's not hard to make jewelry. So have them create a store on Etsy and then write about their products. does assessment of writing have to be a Word document or a Google Doc? Can't we assess writing that is non-traditional writing? And at the same time, we're giving them an authentic audience. And who cares if they sell something? If they sell something, that's just icing on the cake, right? In either case, you're introducing them some ideas and ways of thinking that they've never been maybe exposed to before. And then, let's see. The last one that I'll show that I think is pretty cool is Storybird. Has anyone ever seen Storybird? Love Storybird. So basically, Storybird is like people who are artists. Well, I'm not going to log in stuff I don't have time. But they're artists who submit collections of drawings. And it's just a collection of like 5 to 7 to 10 drawings. Then you can take those drawings and write a story about those drawings. You could have 10 different stories in the same exact drawings. And it works on any device, laptop, tablet, phone, and it gives you this, template of writing a story about somebody else's artwork. And then it gets published onto the Storybird platform, and you can export it, and you can share it with grandma and grandpa. You can publish it on your blog, and you can embed it into your website. So the kids who are your kids who love to write, you don't need to be artists to write a children's book, right? Go ahead, or maybe give an example.
I've used this this past year at my school with my 3rd graders, and I've never seen them write more in my entire life. Because like even the ones that didn't like writing, they were so excited because they have the picture and they're like, oh well, I can do this and this and this and this, and they would just click on a new picture, and it was like more writing than I'd seen from them all year. So it's amazing.
Cool. So again, this isn't about there's a lot of different ways to do this, right? But it's about having an authentic audience. Very rarely do we have sessions at a conference like this that are about authentic audience. Now, yeah, maybe you need some training on how to create a blog, but you know what? You can find all that stuff on YouTube. How do I create a kid blog? How do I create a Storybird? Just go to YouTube. And listen, this is something that seemed obvious to me for a long time, and it apparently wasn't as obvious to other people. If you're ever not sure how to do something, just type your question into Google. Seriously. It is. If you ask your librarian, they're going to tell you that's not best practices for internet search. And that's okay, because you're still going to find the stuff that you're looking for, right? Like when I was an instructional technologist, I didn't have a master's degree in any kind of technology-related master's degree. I just wasn't afraid to search the interwebs for stuff, right? And once I became an instructional technologist, people would say to me, hey, they would seriously send me questions like, hey, what was the link for that Storybird website? And I'd be like, copy, paste into Google, link, copy, paste, back to the teacher. They'd be like, oh my God, you're amazing. How do you know all this stuff? I'd be like, I just copy and pasted your question into Google. I don't have the lesson plan or grade now. But seriously, just don't be afraid. Just ask. Just type your question into Google. You're going to find your answer. I promise you. Okay? But until we start asking those questions, we're not going to find the answers. The internet's full of answers. It doesn't have the questions, though. Teachers and students have those questions. So go out and find a way to incorporate authentic audience into your lesson plans, and you will not regret it. You won't go back to teaching any other way. So I think we're out of time, right? Is it over at 2:10? 1:10? Wait.
2:20.
Oh, we have more time. Oh. Awesome. I thought, okay, my bad. Okay. Flip Snack. Does anyone know what Flip Snack is? Oh, love it. Okay, so Flip Snack allows you to make these digital like magazines or books. So like, have you ever seen these?
Oh, yeah.
And if, usually it makes like the page flipping sound when you do it. I don't know why it doesn't do it anymore. All you do is you upload PDFs, and it turns it into that. So you can have kids create things in Google Docs, just insert some images, insert some text, save as PDF, upload to FlipSnack, and you have a digital flipping book that can be embedded to a blog or a website. Right? Another really cool way to incorporate an authentic audience and publish their work online. Super, super easy to do. What else do I have here? Digital badges. Has anyone gotten into digital badges? Ooh, I love this idea. Okay, digital badges. Are you familiar with like Boy Scouts or Cub Scouts? Right? You master a skill, you get a badge. Well, it's the same thing, but digitally. So you master a skill in the real world, you publish your work online, and then you get a badge to show that you have that skill, right? And so you can use something like Credly to create your own badges. So there's like museums that will create, go to the museum, do these 5 challenges, submit your evidence that you did these 5 challenges, and then we'll give you a badge for doing it. It's a really cool way. So you can even have kids create content that people have to complete to get the badge, right? There's a site called DIY.org that's also really cool. So see, you can create your own badges. You can create your like challenges or things that the students have to do to earn the badge, and then it allows you to create the badge that you can then give to your students, and it allows you to create a dashboard. I could do a whole session on Credly. It's really cool. It allows you to create like a dashboard, and then you can see, okay, David's completed these 3 badges, but the thing that's really cool, I can also see the evidence that he submitted to get that badge. So it isn't just some arbitrary like digital badge. I can actually see the Google Doc that he submitted, or the slide deck that he created, or the video that he created, or the tweets that he sent that he did in order to get that badge. So Credly is a way to issue the badges. And then DIY.org is a way for kids to connect with other kids who are completing or earning the same types of badges. Let's see. Hold on. I haven't been on here in a while. Find a good example. Darn it. Oh, here. Maybe up here. Explore. Here. Okay. Here's a good example. Like string art, right? You nail the nails into the board, then you string on the nails, and you create some art. So there might be like 5 different string art challenges that are like templates that you just recreate, you take a picture of, you publish it on the DIY website, and then you have to come up with one on your own. You do those 6 things, and then you get a badge for doing it. But the thing that's cool about this with kids is that not everything they're doing, they're creating with technology. It might be create a sundial with a piece of paper and a pencil, right? Take a picture of it, share it online. And so then it's a way for kids to connect with other like-minded kids who are doing, science projects or art projects or knitting projects. And there's this online community of people who are connecting based on the similar types of things that they're creating or producing. And at the end of it, then they have this digital badge to show that they've done those kinds of things. There's organizations like the MacArthur Foundation that are trying to make digital badges like a Pandora of digital badges. So how in Pandora, you type in a band that you like, and it plays a bunch of other similar bands. Well, they want to make badging so that if you earn a certain badge, it then recommends a bunch of other badges that we think you'd be interested in based on the fact that you've earned this badge. Really, really cool stuff. All right. Does anyone have a YouTube channel? Your own YouTube channel?
Yeah, I just learned that we all do.
You all do.
Yeah.
What did you know, I should say? Did you know you had your own YouTube channel? So you know, when kids are old enough, they can have their own YouTube channel too.
This concludes the session you are currently in. Please take a moment as you transition to stop by the rotunda and check out the student showcase, and don't forget to stop by and see if you want to try. Also, the following 3 people, please stop by the Ergotron desk before you leave today.
Oh,
Dustin Curtis,
Ergotron desk.
Cassie Kautzer, Renee Treat. Thank you.
Nice. So last thing I'll show you then, you can make a playlist of videos that you've created. Like this is, I call my personal work playlist. So this session that's being recorded, my 2 keynotes, they get published on YouTube. I just grab them and throw them into my personal work playlist. And then I have all these examples of work that I've done, and it's on YouTube and available for people to find. So eventually, for the right situations, the right learning opportunities, the right age kids, they could do the same thing and have their own YouTube channel and showcase their work. So now, thank you for coming. All right.